Okie dokie. So welcome back everybody from lunch. I hope you had a nice break. We're joined for the next session called Pitch Perfect by Lloyd, Angus, Mary and Lucy. And without further ado, I'm going to shut off my camera and shut off my mic and hand you over to Lloyd, who's going to be chairing this conversation. Just as normal, just put any questions you have in the chat and we'll get to them throughout the conversation. And Lloyd, over to you.
Thanks, Susan. Appreciate that. Hi, I think it's probably best if we just kind of have a quick introduction, kind of let everybody know who we are. Also probably let each other know who we are. So in no particular order, just because he's in the top left of my corner. Angus, would you want to tell a bit about yourself to get us kicked off?
Sure. I mean, complete past to present or just present?
Whatever you want to disclose, I think is probably the best place to start.
Okay. Well, I guess I've been, I've been doing A&R for probably over 25 years now in the UK, at both publishers and record labels. I've worked at majors and indies, and I am now at a company called Nettwerk, who are a Canadian label management company. It's a music company, I guess. It touches sort of most of the areas. Big office in LA, New York, and I run the UK office team. And do all the A&R, so all the finding and signing domestic acts and international acts, and then obviously making the records for most of the acts that kind of come through, setting up sessions, doing all the regular A&R things, and then basically seeing them through from start of the process, of the creative process, to sitting there and planning meetings and making sure that the records are being released properly and in the way the artist wants, and having all those external conversations with, my contacts at DSPs, live agents, all of the other stuff that A&R people do and managers do by, running around and shouting and screaming about the artists that we sign. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. Thanks so much, Mary. Because you're in the middle, so I'm going to go to you next.
Yeah, sure. So I'm relatively new to the music industry in general. I've been working at Tune, the record label, and specifically Just Isn't Music, the publishing arm of the label, for just over 3 years now, and it's been my only job, so I have no other experience apart from working at the label. I started doing sort of bespoke catalogue assistance, so helping organise basically the commercial catalogue for the publishing arm. And then from there, I basically developed my role, and I'm now doing A&R for both the publishing side and also the label side. So as Angus said, trying to find new people to sign, coming up with creative ways of working together and working with brands. And yeah, and I also do, I'm quite big in like the sync writing with our roster as well. So both in terms of production music and also on the commercial level as well.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Mary. Lucy, over to you.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I am director of a management company for songwriters, producers and mixers called 17 Days Music, and I will give 10 knows where that comes from by the end of the session. And I also do A&R for one of the biggest independent labels probably in the world, actually, definitely one of the biggest networks, a company PIAS, where I sort of sit in their A&R department to assist them with the songwriting and production side of artist development, really. So to plug in my knowledge from my management business into the A&R and work alongside the team there. But much like Angus pushing, God, I must have been doing it. I think Angus was one of my first meetings in music ever, actually. Certainly one of my first finals. So I must be at least 20 years now in it. So yeah.
And he didn't scare you off?
Where, yeah, sorry?
He didn't scare you off then?
We worked together. We worked together. I think I was a publisher at the time. Lucy, you were the record label, and
exactly.
We signed a great act together. So,
and I'm still in touch with the lead singer of that act, one of the finest talents I'll ever work with, ever. Unfortunately, the world just wasn't ready for them at the time that Angus and I were working with them. But hey.
Timing is everything, and they were just ahead of their time, basically.
Brilliant. Last but probably least will be myself. I'm Lloyd. I run a small Glasgow DIY label called Olive Grove, which I've been doing for 10 years. It was actually our 10th anniversary just the other week. So it's something I do more in my spare time. I do with it all myself. So I do the marketing, promotion, distribution, everything, that kind of all the DIY aspects of running a label. That's what I get up to. So I work with folk Scottish artists like Carla Easton, Broken Chanter, Randolph Sleep. Released numerous kind of different records over the years. So this is something that I'm just really passionate about doing. So it's not something I do full time like you guys, but it's something that I really love doing. So it's kind of come from different kind of backgrounds there. So I guess we'll be able to pull in different kind of approaches to how you guys do things. To the way that I do things will probably be quite different. So on that basis, I think the best thing to start with is to think about, like, the word pitch is kind of thrown about a lot these days, and kind of think about, what does it actually mean? What is a pitch to you guys, in your eyes? Like, how does someone pitch music to you? I'll start with Mary, because you're in the middle.
Okay. Well, for me, I mean, because I work across so many areas of a company, I get various forms of pitches. I mean, I'll start with the more production music side of things. I receive a lot of demos. It could be just one email with a SoundCloud link, or I receive like a fully detailed email of like the whole journey of the musician, and going through all their tracks and everything. And then going from production music, then I receive lots of sync pitches as well. A lot of artists, sync producers, top liners, singer-songwriters send music over. And then obviously I receive lots of artists, and more often than not, it's their managers and their team setting up meetings with us at Justice and Music and Ninja and getting a discussion going on, on hopefully maybe forming a partnership. But so that's quite a broad spread.
It's such a wide topic, though. That's kind of just not.
I know, exactly. I mean, what is a pitch? And that was obviously just talking about the email aspect of a pitch. I mean, you can have it in a discussion at a gig, obviously no gigs, but just in general conversation.
Fair enough. Angus, what about yourself?
Gosh, everything and everything basically. Much the same probably as Mary, but I guess, from top down, usually my pitches will come from, lawyers usually pitch, like direct pitch artists, and very good at it. Managers, obviously, who are in the game and have been in the game and know me and I know them, and they have new stuff. And even if it's not their stuff, sometimes they pitch you on someone else's stuff. Artists I find it's great. Pitch me direct if you want. I will listen. I will make time to listen to your music. And I get pitched on LinkedIn regularly. I get pitched on, Instagram, SoundCloud, all of them. And you know what? I try and make time. I do get round eventually. And I have had acts kind of come through that way, a bit old school these days, when everyone requires so much more. But in early findings, I always find sometimes you get pitched direct by the artist, and that's cool. It's a long road for those sort of pitches, though. Those are things that aren't necessarily going to be signed straight away, but you can certainly start a relationship if you and give them some good pointers, and if you've time to do that. I mean, sometimes you have time, sometimes you don't, but otherwise, everyone can pitch. Agents pitch, like I said, lawyers, managers, agents, DSP contacts I have usually let me know or pitch me on things they think are really good. Just everywhere and from everywhere is and it's what's a pitch? A pitch is just someone trying to share their music, and I think obviously some pitches are taken slightly more seriously, or just happen quicker because that person has more experience in the business and or they've had success before, and you kind of listen to that particular manager or lawyer. But I certainly get around to all pitches coming from every direction.
Fair play to you. Lucy, I was going to ask the question, but I can see that Ellie's picked up in the chat as well. Are you similar to Angus in terms of it essentially has to be more of a kind of a middleman, an artist manager or an agent pitching the music to you rather than a band coming to you directly or an artist coming to you directly? Or
pitch to, I divide it into two categories. It's, am I doing the pitching or am I being pitched to, right? And this morning I was pitched to via Instagram by a songwriter that was looking for representation, and I told him to send me a link to the music and I listened to it. Like, if I have, it's more about, I think, because I run my own business, I have a toddler and I do the consultancy at PIAS as well. So for me, it's about grabbing moments of time.
Yep.
You grab me at a good moment and I've got the time, I'll listen straight away. And then I guess there's the tier of, if it's coming through a contact or somebody that I know, I'll make the time for it. If it's coming from somebody that's anonymous, if you grab me in a good moment, I'll get to it straight away. Otherwise, it will probably go on a pile of, I will get to it, just give me a moment. But as Angus said, if it's coming via sort of a verified source, as it were, it's more likely to get looked at a little bit quicker.
Yeah,
So,
it's got a lot to chance, isn't it, in terms of just timing? Because I can relate to that completely. If you catch me in the right mood, if you catch me in a moment where I'm piled up with work and trying to deal with things, and I've just, it can be down to chance, I think, in that terms. But if you've got somebody else, like you'll have people, managers coming to you, but I'll have people recommend artists to me from a DIY label, and that gives me more of the kind of, it's almost like an assurance side, I think, of kind of the quality of something.
It's like a valid recommendation.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and the other time to take the chance. And it doesn't always necessarily mean, by the way, that just because somebody is somebody, it's obviously a matter of taste and opinion too. So just because somebody that I know is pitching something to me, it doesn't mean that it's going to be liked or it's going to work. I mean, I guess the only guarantee is more often than not, it will get listened to.
Yeah.
But it doesn't alter the response or the reaction necessarily.
Yeah, totally. So leading on from that, I guess we've kind of, what constitutes a good pitch to you guys? I mean, timing is not something that the people sending pitches to you necessarily have any kind of influence over. They're catching you at a bad moment. They don't know you're necessarily having a bad moment. But in terms of actually getting a good pitch to you guys, where would they start?
Be concise, I think. Be direct. Don't assume things of the person that you're sending your pitch to. Don't assume that they have time to listen to it and read through pages and pages of a biography. Don't assume that if you put a framework of a song or a demo there, that they'll imagine how you want it to end up sounding. Like, if somebody, first impressions count, so put your best foot forward. Don't assume that you're going to get a wider opportunity to explore. If somebody is stretched for time, they'll want to hear something or see something straight away that makes them, intrigued enough to continue conversation. But I'd say, be concise and don't make assumptions.
Fair play. What about yourself, Mary?
I was going to say, 2 points. I mean, there are so many things to talk about on this topic. But first of all, if you're pitching to a publisher, I would say it's super important to make sure that you know all about your copyright and like who has written on your tracks. If it's just you, then that's great. But if you've sort of had other help on the top line or who's produced it, that's of massive importance clearly for a publisher to know that it's been properly registered or that they have the information. And then secondly, I was going to say it's probably quite easy to not customize your pitches. Obviously, we don't want a massive spiel about how great you think the publisher is and how great you think you are. But I think definitely making it more personal to who you're pitching it to is definitely a bonus. You want to have that sort of partnership and relationship already there at the beginning to hopefully develop.
Definitely. Angus, what about yourself?
I guess, in a perfect pitch, depending on if I've got my domestic head on or if I'm thinking in terms of international, as my bosses will always want reams of information about any act in terms of the data, in terms of the back end, and if there is data there. I mean, normally in the UK, when an act gets lots of big data, they're already on the pitch. So if it's an early artist, I still like to know if something's going on in their backyard. You know, if they've played a show that they sold out that was 100 tickets, you know, that will interest me. You know, any audience building, anything like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be lots of information, but you know, simple stuff. Just knowing that how many followers you have on Spotify sometimes as well. You know, just gives me an overshot. It lets me know exactly where you are, what you've done, how you try to connect. And like I said, the kind of local connection I think is kind of important. Anything local, any local press, any local blogs, anything happening at a sort of at a grassroots level that you yourself as an artist or your manager have been able to do, to plug you in, to grow where you're coming from. Some pitches are obviously, you know, starting, could be a bedroom producer or an artist just recording in their bedroom. They've got nothing else. So all I need to know is, all I can judge on that is, you know, is the song really, really great? Is the voice unique and fantastic? You know, that's all I've got. Whereas, you know, pitches are more credible as you get wider in this business and it kind of goes out. And I obviously work for a very sort of international company. You know, what is required in terms of the sort of criteria for aligning ourselves with artists and bringing them into sort of the network fold is probably a lot more sort of data related and audience related, really, and on what you kind of manage to achieve and build, which we can then add on to, you know. And that's not to say that I don't and try to sign artists at a very early stage, but you know, there's certainly now more than ever room for artists that kind of try and connect and grow themselves at a very early level and get it rolling a little bit. So within pitches, I do like to have an amount of information, you know, just, you know, anything, again, like I said, anything that's kind of local based, it interests me more than ever. I think that's,
does that provide you with more assurances then, in terms of, like, before you even listen to it, they could say, look, I've done X, Y, Z, we're at a point, we want to go to the next point. Are you more inclined to want to listen to that music then? Is that kind of the general gist? Because
it's not more kind to listen to it, because I listen to all of it, and if something moves me and I get excited and it's impactful and I think this is, oh my god, this is fantastic, I'll go. That's still who I am. That's who I. That's, you know, that's the annoying part, you know. But the you know, for kind of, yeah, for getting into seriously thinking about signing a new act, I'd really want to be looking under the bonnet and seeing exactly where the engagement was and where it was coming from and what they were good at and where what the management has been adding in value to that. You know, have they had a PR on board doing early sort of online? Is it connecting in places which I can tangibly see and go, okay, we can add to this. And that even, you know, that can be international stuff. You know, maybe they had a blog in France or what, you know, it's small little things at an early stage, but these things give a confidence to not necessarily just myself, but certainly as you go up the tree in most labels now, I think that confidence and that story is necessary, especially, you know, in my company. You know, again, it's an international. The people I go to do my deals through, Terry is in Vancouver and our main office is in LA and Los Angeles. So, you know, when they're looking at me going, there's this little act from the UK, they kind of want to know that this act has got something going on before it goes into an international sort of, you know, through our system. So yeah, any kind of, like, going back to any kind of anything that's relevant or pertinent to how an artist sees themselves, how they've managed to connect locally themselves. It's all good reading. I read it all. It's good to know. You have to kind of know it these days.
Fair play.
It helps us to help them ultimately, because we'll know you're probably a little bit early. You know, you don't even need to sort of be in the sort of, you know, label right now. You might, you know, give it 6 months, see how your numbers grow, see what you release, and then we can come back and have that conversation later on.
Fair play. So in terms of thinking about a lot of the questions, people in the call just now will be thinking about their like electronic press kits, getting everything like that sorted. So kind of what things should the artists start to think about preparing? So we've touched about figures and kind of what they've done. Should it almost be like an EPK these days, be more like a CV? So you used to have the music, a proof of here's music blogs we've worked with, but also at the same time, like we've sold this amount of CDs, we've sold this amount of records, we've got this amount of followers on Spotify. Should it also kind of be data driven at the same time as also being creative and kind of finding a nice balance between the two? I mean, where should artists start to think when they're coming to you guys to pitch something? Should it be about the music and then underneath start to think about, well, and then we've done this, or would it be more a case of thinking put the data at the top, because that would be essentially proving to someone that you've got something there, and then the kind of music's underneath? Is there kind of any kind of approaches you think would be best? I mean, guys in the chat are asking about like notable pitches that you've received. I appreciate if you get noticeable pitches that people might want to replicate them, so you might end up with the same pitches over and over. But like any kind of guidance you could give people as to kind of what they should do when they're thinking about their electronic press kit. When Lucy, we'll go with you for this one to start.
I'd always start with the music. I mean, I'm an old romantic like that, though. Starts and finishes with the music, and more specifically with the song. So begin with that, because that will determine how far I'm prepared to go based on, you know, what level you're already at. Like, I may fall head over heels in love with a song and be like, okay, the numbers, the streams are pretty low, but I'm so passionate about this and I'm so far in that I'm prepared to roll up my sleeves that far and take on that legwork with the artist and their team, if any exists. As Angus said, I think, you know, in this day and age, it is imperative to have as much information as, I think it always has been imperative to have as much information as possible. But, you know, numbers don't lie, as they say. So information like that can accompany. And also, I always really enjoy if an artist has had the opportunity to create some visuals to go with their music, because it gives me another understanding of their creative expression in addition to the song. It sort of helps paint that sort of mood board, as it were. And if you haven't been able to do, I'm much more on the creative, I'd say. So even if you haven't been able to do a video or an accompanying visual, sort of an idea, I guess it would be at a later stage. On that initial EPK, music, video, a little biog, and any data if you have it. But then I'm gonna, you know, if all those things go well, I'm gonna want to dive into more of your sort of mood board and palette and vision for it. But always begin with the music.
Perfect.
That's what gets people passionate.
What about yourself, Mary?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with what Lucy's just said. Music definitely the paramount, the most important thing that I would definitely listen to. And I do think if you've written with other writers, that's definitely something to mention. Doesn't matter if they're, you know, relatively small, you know, that doesn't matter. It's just interesting to find out who you've been writing with. And also, obviously, you don't really want to waffle too much, but I also find and this gives a really great insight into the artist as well. If you write just a little bit, maybe just like 2 or 3 sentences about one track, describing its sort of origin or journey or how it came about, I think that gives a really nice insight into also how you work as well. And then also if you've ever toured, or, you know, where you performed live and how that's been received, again, like both online and, you know, how many tickets are sold. That's all useful stuff.
Excellent. Angus, yourself?
Again, you know, it's all, you know, it's the music first.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, you know what? The quickest way of doing things, I always think, is just send me the selection of links that, you know, and I'll just click through them. You know, so if you've released something and you've got a Spotify link, send it to me, because I can just, you know, boop, there's all the info I need, kind of, which tells me where you are and you're sort of like in your, you know, at the start, middle, wherever. And then, you know, Instagram, any kind of social stuff, so I can just quickly have a look. Because I think most artists now are savvy enough to you know those that do know what they are. They're savvy enough to kind of have a kind of an Instagram or you know, or even a Twitter, whatever. It just gives me an idea about them. You know, whatever visuals they've chosen to put there gives me a kind of flavor to see exactly if it backs the music up. You know, I'm all about continuity a lot of the time. I think that's something which is super, super important now more than ever. I think because of the just swathes of music and the playlist culture out there. You know, someone who's very good at creating their own sort of unique space musically within that, and can actually, you know, add to that the right photographs themselves, how they perceive themselves. You know, all of that comes through in you know, in well, Instagram or Facebook or any of the things we have now to sort of look at, and that is instantly, to me, as a sort of like as the first person you'll contact at a record company or music company. You know, having all of that very, very quickly for me to have that reaction and go, okay, this music's really great. Like Lucy said, maybe the, you know, okay, follower count or whatever is low, but this is quality, and the Instagram is really savvy, and they seem to have an idea of who they are, and that just gives confidence, and you need to have that confidence when you're, you know, finding and working with artists you want to work with. You want to work with people who you can trust and believe in, because, you know, you're going to be working them through just not only internally in terms of the sort of the record label or an international label, but, you know, outside of that, you have to make media believe in them and believe that they know who they are and they know what they're doing. Because as soon as people deviate from the continuity of what they do, you kind of go, oh, they don't really know who they are. They don't know what they are. So they're not ready yet. You know, I think 9 out of 10 acts that come through really know who they are. The music and the visuals, you know, work together, and those artists are the ones that usually cut through the quickest, in my experience. But that's certainly something that yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'll shut up.
I agree with you there, Angus. I think that it's imperative that the identity. I always say to an artist, like, the moments before you're signed, the moments that you walk through that record label door, it's imperative that you have that iron rod of identity in you, not least because you have to know who you are before you can expect anybody else to have an understanding of it. But also because if you waver slightly, and, you know, it doesn't need to come with all the bells and whistles. Having a really strong sense of identity doesn't mean that you've had a photo shoot with the perfect photographer or executed a video perfectly, or your Instagram is all intact. It's something that's in you. And if you end up in a situation, you know, and most people have like rocky moments on who they are, but if you haven't got that solidified at your core, you leave yourself exposed to other people trying to implement on you what they think you should be. And that's when I see artists fall through the cracks. I think you have to be of a particular age or a particular experience. I still work with a woman now who's 21, but she was 13 when I met her, and her sense of identity was stronger than some 50-year-olds that I've met in my life. And she knew then and there, and we just came along as the add-ons to help facilitate and secure and nurture and grow that. But she had that in her. So I cannot stress enough, as Angus said, how important it is to have that consistency in your identity. And it's not easy to find, and take the time, take the moments, figure it out.
So one of the things you touched upon briefly there was social media. In terms of, I know is it important to have, is it music is social media a big factor in terms of looking at clicking on Facebook, clicking on Twitter, clicking on Instagram? And is it more about the identity, from what you're saying there, than it is the number of followers you've got? I mean, or is it a kind of balance of the two when you're looking at these things? And it is just in that kind of initial first interaction with a person or an artist, you get their EPK through, and you're looking at you got the music, you like the music, then you're clicking on the links. I mean, if an artist is following 10,000 people but has like 300 followers, does that kind of detract from that kind of instant kind of attraction, so to speak? Does there's any kind of tangible kind of link between the two? Should artists be thinking about what they're doing, as well as the representation about how they perceive themselves in terms of the outside world? In terms of just thinking about like how somebody, you're looking at an artist for the first time, is that first impression really important in terms of what they're doing on their social medias?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, especially with COVID and the absence of live, the importance of social media has just like escalated even more than it ever was. And I know that I definitely, when I look at an artist at Spotify or Apple and then click on their Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, the way that an artist engages with their fans, no matter how big, is of like utmost importance, I think, because it shows their like how they interact. And obviously without any live, this new sort of world that we live in of doing live sessions, and you know, that's just so important. So yeah.
What about yourself, Angus?
Yeah, it kind of horses for courses for me, really. It depends. Having sort of, you know, there are certain laneways, there are certain pathways, and certain artists that the social media is going to be much easier for. And I think, yes, with those sort of artists, I would say, gosh, yeah, it tells me a lot. It tells me what needs to be built. It tells me how we can do it, how good they are at engaging with their fan base. I mean, it is an amazing thing. It is fantastic to have that straight to fan, that relationship straight with your fans. It's the dream, really. But at the same time, it is extraordinarily hard to kind of cut through the static that's out there and to kind of build things without having, you know, and going to what Mary said, you know, live is really has been the sort of barometer for me on a domestic level for certain acts. You know, it's ticket sales, it's bums on seats. That is telling me at which level the reality of the sort of the fan base, of the connection that is happening is going on, because people are motivated, they're buying tickets, they're coming to a show. You know, obviously in terms of social media, certain artists can be absolutely terrible at it and have really bad numbers, but make fantastic music. But the laneway for their music will be, you know, streaming wise, it will be you know, say for instance, I'll say, you know, right now, you know, bands are probably finding it, you know, domestically a little bit harder, you know, to build those sort of streaming follower numbers with, you know, without live there for them to kind of, because that's where they come alive. That's where they do the thing. Whereas if it's a sort of a very savvy 16-year-old, the next Lord, for instance, or something, you know, I would want to see that she has connection with, you know, girls her own age, for instance, you know, so that's connecting. So she's representing something already there to an audience. She has that connection, and she's using it really well. That within the more sort of pop strata or alternative pop strata is what I would want to see. But it's not necessarily the be all and end all. I think it's something that, you know, yes, as a label, you take on board. We have digital managers and we, you know, invest in advertising and making sure that we kind of push, you know, your social numbers and your followers, and we try and pinpoint audience and really that's kind of what a sort of the modern label, should be doing. It's helping you to grow followers and audience. Obviously, as an artist, primarily, playing live, getting your records on the radio, all these things sort of help. But I'm wandering off point here. But probably, in terms of and yes, I will look at socials. Of course, I will. I'll check social numbers. But it doesn't stop me when, as Lucy said, if the music is fantastic and it's impactful, and I see a route for it, and I believe this artist has their own identity, they understand what it is, and maybe they only understand half of it, but at least it's kind of there and it's strong enough for me to go, okay, let's get involved. Maybe there's an early way we can get involved. Maybe a conversation can be had first of all, depending on where they are. They might not have a manager yet, they might not have a lawyer yet, they might not have any of these things. So you kind of, there's plenty of times where a label or any A&R can be involved and have early conversations with an artist before they even a manager is on board. A lot of times I actually try and help artists to get managers so that at least we have that next piece in place, so we can kind of move forward with confidence. So yeah, to answer the question, yes and no.
Have you answered those? I can't remember. Have you done this already?
I'd probably echo some of what Angus was saying, actually. I think it's artists, I'd expect to look at their Instagram page and see a certain number of followers and fans engaged. And on others, if those numbers weren't there, it wouldn't necessarily deter me from the artist because of the music they make. So I think, it's as Angus so perfectly put there, it's a yes and no. Because
there's no simple answer. Yeah.
It's dependent on who the artist is and the music they're making. I think, I'd expect to see certain things from someone and not necessarily expect to see those in another artist at a given stage in their career.
No, that makes sense. Total sense. So when somebody's starting to do the research to kind of think about preparing to send music to folk like yourself, to labels, to potential managers, I mean, what advice would you give them in terms of actually conducting the initial research? Is it a case of just seeing what's online? For me, if people want to engage with me, it's a lot easier because I'm based in Glasgow. I put on gigs. I man the door. I man the merch store. So it's a lot easier for people to come up, put a face to the name kind of thing. But for you guys, it's a lot more, unless people are coming on to things like this. How do people find you? And what's the best way for people to do their research to find you in the first place? So I'll go with Mary for that one, sorry.
As in try and find me online?
We're just trying to, just in general, for someone who's doing a bit of research, yes. I'm wary of what I'm saying here. But just someone who's doing any kind of research, not necessarily for you guys in particular, just anyone who's looking to do a bit of research to get themselves started when they're starting to think about pitching their music. Where should they start thinking about doing their
obviously looking on LinkedIn, just seeing who follows whoever. That's a great place to start. Obviously doing research, if you've got your top the labels who you think you're going to reach out to, then definitely dive into their websites, see who works for them. And I would definitely recommend hitting them up on the relevant people up on LinkedIn. And the world of social media as well, as we've all spoken about, people hit us up on Instagram, SoundCloud, Facebook, all those various channels. But I would definitely say when you're conducting the research of trying to find the right people, obviously it's good to go broad, but don't make it too broad. You don't want to reach out to too many people. I would say that is, you kind of want to make every reach out really purposeful, and believe in the music that you're pitching.
Hey, Lucy, did you have any thoughts?
Remind me of the question specifically again.
Yeah,
is it
sure.
Just in terms of doing research before you pitch? And
exactly that.
gearing yourself to, I mean, I think that by the time you're getting ready to pitch, you probably have an idea of the kind of culture, environment and label or management or publisher that you want to be with. And I'd say you're aesthetically, in terms of what you're putting together, you're probably already leaning in that sort of ballpark. I would say somebody had put in there, how do you get around the no unsolicited?
I was going to come to that. Do you want to take that one on?
I was just thinking, I was like, well, you know, I would, as Mary was saying, like, find those avenues that are there for you to find. LinkedIn is an open forum. Anybody can go on LinkedIn and try and work out what the network is and try and get to somebody. And if you don't get a response back, or if you're continuously finding that the door's shut in your face, then maybe what you need to do is take a step back and actually look for an appointment with a lawyer or a manager that has those relationships at the record labels for you. You know, maybe you're sort of running before you can walk, so to speak. So if you're finding that you're not getting access to the A&R people at the labels or publishers that you want to, then go and have a cup of tea with a lawyer or manager and see if they can, you know, if you can start working with that person, then they well may have those relationships that you're trying to strike.
Do you know then, how would a band find a lawyer then? If we're taking that step back, I mean, I can't imagine a lot of DIY Glasgow bands will be sitting there going, I know a music lawyer in London. So how do they get to that point, and how would they know? Is it again just following that LinkedIn chain to try and work their way backwards?
When I first started in music, it was like the Holy Grail Bible, which is called the Music Week Directory, which we had the joy of being able to scan through, and it listed all the lawyers in the countries and all the record labels and the A&R people. And I don't know what the modern equivalent of that is. Maybe it is LinkedIn. I'm not au fait with the with the app myself, but you know, God, how does one find a lawyer? You know, go to the venue, speak to people like yourself, like as you're, you know, figure out what the network is and use the resources that you have. If there's a venue that's local to you that seems to have talent passing through that isn't that local, chances are they'll know somebody outside of your network, and maybe an agent in London that might then know a lawyer. It's very much, you know, it's much like A&R, and I guess the beginning stages of an artist's career is also like A&R, is where it's like, you know, when I do A&R, and when I was a younger A&R, I'd say that like 70% of my job was like being a private investigator, just trying who the links are, how I get here, how I get there, and you sort of worm your way through until you find an open door, you know. But I think the connects, the links, they're all there. All you need is the music and a polite manner, and people, I'm sure, will be willing to help you.
Fair play. Angus, did I see you sticking your hand up a minute ago, or was that?
I was trying to find a lawyer. I was like, hello. Crazy. You know, yeah. I would, to be honest with you, I would put some music out there first and see if it has any connection, because, you know, ultimately, there's so many A&R people, and there's so many managers, and there's so many people are finding and discovering every day, and try that route first, because if your music is really good enough and great, someone will come across you, and someone will get in contact. I'm a great believer of that, first and foremost. It's never been easier to self-release or to put stuff out there, you know, just early, you know, even if it's just on SoundCloud or something, you know, there's scouts, there's lots of people looking. So if you are fantastic, I'm a great believer that you will be found. A manager will be told about you. You know, someone will say this is fantastic and share. Every day I get lists from my various producer manager friends and everything, who, you know, reams of new acts that are, you know, are not signed yet, or they're co-writing with writers. Again, this is, you know, it's completely different with whatever genre you're in. You know, if you're an electronic artist, and you are, you know, you're producing your own stuff, you know, you're probably going to be self-releasing it first of all, and someone will come across you who's had experience in that game and will think you're excellent and will want to manage you and bring you a lawyer or whatever. And then there's going to be, you know, if you're a live band, then the chances are that your route through this is probably going to be a promoter, an agent, you know, tipping off an A&R person. And then, yeah, I mean, you can always, you know, finding lawyers. I mean, they're all online. They all have emails on there. You know, it's very easy to contact any music lawyer that's out there. You know, you just have to go online, and all the major UK companies are there, and all the lawyers have their individual emails next to their photographs. So you might not know. You might have to go a little bit broad if you really want to kind of find a lawyer first. But I think really, you know, in this day and age, you know, self-releasing yourself, putting the music out there yourself, is your first step. And that, if it's great, you'll get noticed quickly, you know. And if not, you put out another little record and another little record, and you build your own thing. And you know, that is something which, you know, is really important. And I think a lot more artists are doing it that way and proving that it can be done that way. There are label services and places where you don't need to have a manager, you know, you don't need to have a lawyer as yet. You know, you can do all these things and get your music out there without having to kind of enter into the sort of like the industry. So yeah.
In terms of then people submitting demos and whatnot, we've talked about LinkedIn a little bit there, but are things like, you know, you get your generic info at or demos at email addresses. I mean, do you think many artists get signed by that way, by just sending their EPKs to generic email addresses like that, or is that, do you think that's more of a polite way for just shifting demos off into a box that somebody might look at once in a while, and it's just there to kind of take direct people away from contacting you guys directly or other people directly? I mean, do those kind of email addresses work? Are more personal touches like your LinkedIn's, or as Lucy was saying about people contacting you on Instagram and all these kind of things, do you think they're a better avenue to go down, or is it kind of a yes and no for everything kind of thing? Is there a better, is that personal touch probably a bit better as an approach? Who am I going to pick on this time? I'm going to go with you, Mary. Sorry, because you're in the middle, you're right down from
right in front of you. Again, I think yes and no, and it depends on the artist and what the music is. I mean, from my own experience, I'm one of those people who I get all the demos, licensing, emails sent to my inbox, so I am flooded with them. I basically put them all in a folder, and then every week I will go through and make sure I listen to all of those emails, all of those links. So, I mean, for our system, it works. And I think if you've tried the personal touch down various avenues and maybe that hasn't worked, then why not do licensing or demos or whatever it is? Because it will get to someone, and hopefully people will listen. And again, if the music is good, even if it's just like one link, then hopefully a conversation will be had.
Are you, Lucy, Angus, are you kind of similar thoughts, or?
Yeah, I think one probably just gets you listened to a bit quicker than the other, really. I think ultimately, you know, those email addresses aren't set up just to send you off into a vast space of nothingness. Like, somebody will check them. I have an info, and I know you too. I mean, it's just a question of when. And maybe if something comes into my personal address, I'll listen to it quicker. But it will get listened to if it comes into the info address as well. So, yeah, actually, it's just, yeah.
I was going to say, I've had moments of a person emailing info and messaging me direct on LinkedIn and Instagram, and it's like, okay, I really am going to listen to it. So,
well, I was going to follow up with this one. Is persistence a good thing? I mean, there obviously is that fine line of being a bit too pushy, and you can put somebody off. But if somebody doesn't hear back from you after like a couple of weeks, is it okay for a follow-up email as just a general friendly nudge? Are you guys okay with that kind of thing, or is that a case of if you've not got back to that person, take the hint kind of thing? I'll put that to you, Angus.
I actually do need. There's a large volume of stuff that comes through, so sometimes a sort of little nudge. I mean, I do grr and groans and like, oh, you know, I've got many other things to do, or I've got mixes coming, and I'm doing all these other things. You know, how dare you? But you know, it actually goes. I should, you know, I'm polite enough and nice enough to know that, you know, yes, sometimes I can be extremely busy and it takes time to get back to especially, you know, new artists or, you know, demos. And so, yeah, I don't mind the first polite nudge. After that, if I haven't come back, I might have listened to it and gone, not really for me. I usually respond if I've got something comes in very quickly, then it's lost, it's gone. I'm on another strand, so yeah. So I would say persistence isn't a great thing because it'll just piss off. Yeah. Ultimately, I think, you know, if you haven't heard back in a month, politely put a little message through. If you still haven't heard back, then that person is just either too busy, hasn't got to your music yet, or has got to your music and it's not for them and just hasn't, for whatever reason, you know, they're just not being polite enough to respond. Or maybe they just don't have the time because there's about 50 other things going on. And, you know, I think the common misconception of a lot of artists is that A&R people just sort of run around all day trying to find new stuff. That is part of it, but there is a whole other load of work that goes on, not only just through the recording processes and the writing processes, all the things that we aren't actually doing physically ourselves, but we're coordinating those things, and we're coordinating with multiple managers across multiple territories and time zones. And so, you know, I'm sounding poor me, aren't we? Poor me, we're so busy. But that you have to take that into account. You know, we're not this, you know, it's not our be all and end all to find new talent all every day. It is, but it's like we have other stuff that we have to do. So being persistent is just going to, probably piss me off.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
But if your music's amazing and you're persistent and like checking to go, actually, this is great, then, you know, who am I to say? I was just being that day, I was focusing on 20 other things, you know.
No, totally, I can understand that one completely. What about yourself, Mary? Do you find it annoying when bands keep chasing you up and hassling you looking for an answer? I mean, do you get back to everyone? Because whenever I get stuff, I do this in my spare time, so I don't have the time to sit and write back to everyone that sends me a demo, and I try to put it on my website to kind of make that clear, because I find it quite soul destroying getting back to explain to somebody I don't want to work with them. I mean, would you go back to everybody that comes in that sends you something, or?
Again, it depends on. Well, it kind of depends on the pitch, obviously. But I do try and get back. But I mean, as Angus said, like if something else comes in and it's been in your inbox for a month, then it will just get lost. Yeah. Hence why a nudge sometimes is of use, because it could just be lost. But yeah, I would say just don't. If it's not going to be the right fit for whoever you're pitching to, then there's no point in pushing it. Then it will be just like an unhappy relationship and correspondence. And you definitely, you don't want to annoy other people. So
no, completely, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Lucy, do you have anything to add to that at all in terms of thinking about people persisting with you? I mean, persisting's like hassling.
I probably agree. Like, send your email, give it a month. If somebody's not come back to you, give them a nudge. If you've still not heard from them,
do that.
You know, if I hear something and it's amazing, it may be something might come in and I might not get around to listening to it for 3 weeks, but I love it and I'll be in touch straight away. Something could come in and I'll listen to it straight away. And more often than not, if I know it's not right for me right now, I'll reply straight away. So I know that I haven't left that person hanging. but it's not always possible to work that way as much as we try.
No, totally. It would be nice. Susan's raised quite an interesting question in the chat, and it's just thinking about, do you have artists or songwriters from a variety of genders, backgrounds, people with disabilities, and are you doing anything to try and make sure your rosters are more inclusive or inclusive as possible? I'm going to go with you for this one, Angus.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't sort of discriminate against anyone. I think it's, for our label, it's been, I guess, previously in its past, breaking artists in the States has been something which has been, you know, our radio department probably specialized more in kind of folky stuff and everything. So, but we are broadening that. I certainly think from the UK standpoint, I mean, I think we have artists that are across the board, and I will continue to, you know, it makes no difference to me. It's about the music. There are certain genres which I would find it hard to work. I would find it hard to work grime or drill. I have no experience in grime or drill. As much as I love grime, yeah, when I'm feeling angry, I'm at the gym. I don't have the necessary contacts in that area. And I think as a roster and as a label, if a grime artist, they had me from Nettwerk, they say, why are you interested in me? Because you don't have any other grime or hip hop on your roster. And I'll have to be honest and go, I know, but this will be the first time. Let's take a chance. Let's roll the dice. Yeah, you know, but yeah, I mean, I'd love to listen tomorrow. I'd love if I could call up my boss in Vancouver, Terry, and say, can you make a sub label and we can do more black music, more, you know, or grime primarily for me. He might go, yeah, great idea. Otherwise, might go, I don't think you're going to make any money out of it. Which is how bosses of record labels ultimately think. You know, it's that they don't necessarily think about individual artists. They think about, you know, the culture and the economics of the business they're doing. So, but yeah, I mean, we try. We're very inclusive. I think as a very progressive. I mean, my bosses in Canada are the most wonderful and progressively minded people I've ever worked with, I think, in this industry. So yeah, that answer is yes.
I don't even know what drill is, so I'm impressed by that. I'll have to go make a Google that. Mary, do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Yes,
drill, not drill, that is.
Mary, tell us about drill.
Yeah.
Please, I don't know.
Well, yeah, at Ninja Tune, we are very inclusive. I mean, we're very fortunate in the fact that we do have sub-labels, and each of those sub-labels do have a particular sound or sound palette that we definitely want to sign particular artists to. Like we've got Big Data, which is like notoriously like hip hop, and we've got and then we've got Counter, which has the likes of like Odessa, Marabou State, slightly more commercially friendly. And then we've got the amazing Brain Feeder label, which was set up by Flying Lotus, and that's, you know, we've got the likes of Thundercat on there. So in terms of I mean, we're a hugely diverse label and publisher, and we represent people from all walks of life, and that's basically how we started as a label as well. So yeah, in answer to that question, yes, very inclusive to everyone.
Right. And yourself, Lucy?
For me, I think it's sort of a double-pronged question, because obviously different labels and publishers and companies, not everybody in Ninja is well-renowned and incredibly good at the variety of music that they offer, but not everybody is set up as an expert. You know, not everybody, and I'm not saying that Ninja are at all. What you do really well, but you don't want to end up with a situation where people are jacks of all trades and master of none. Like some labels are specifically known for specific music, and as you get, I guess, to the more majors, they have the ability and the capacity to be more varied. I think it's about creating a culture within and an environment within those organizations that represents that diversity, because then you're going to attract the diversity inward as well. So I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. People need to see themselves in the companies that they're walking into. Otherwise, they're not going to feel entirely comfortable or confident, for that matter. So I think a lot of people are having internal conversations at the moment about how they can make those changes and make themselves inclusive. Aren't the ones that you want to steer clear of, but there are many conversations happening online. There are many organizations being set up that are helping steer people in that direction if that's a way that they want to go.
Brilliant. Well, we're pretty much.
Lloyd,
I was about to say we're near the end of our conversation, and then Susan appears.
I know it's always bad news when I appear. So just on time, just to wrap up, it would be great if we could just have like one sentence from everybody as a takeaway to, we've got artists, we've got managers, we've got labels here in the session as well. So it'd be good to have one bit of advice that they could sort of take away for the pitching process, and then I'll leave you all alone. So one bit of advice from each of you.
I'll go first because I'm coming from a DIY label aspect. Think about the person you're approaching as a human being, and take it as a friendly approach. Don't be, for me, it's not a business approach. It's more just a kind of a human being reaching out to another human being to, do you like my music? That's the way I would pitch it to me as a starting point.
Angus, you next.
One sentence. This is really difficult. I can't do anything in one sentence. In pitching, just one sentence. Just be concise. Do your research. I'd say I agree with Lucy a lot on that. It's knowing if you were, again, it's different for every different kind of artist, because certain artists and genres have a different way of maneuvering through the industry, and other artists have a different way. So it's down to what type of artist you are, really. Just be true to yourself and believe in your pitch, believe in your music, and be confident, but be polite.
Okay. I did lots of sentences together, but
sorry. It was useless, wasn't it? I am sorry. Too much coffee.
What about you, Mary?
I mean, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I mean, now I'm going to blabber on. No. Being true to yourself, and then letting the music speak for itself.
Amazing.
That's it.
And Lucy, if you want to close proceedings, what's your bit of advice taken for the audience?
Make it your best and make it concise.
Amazing. What a piece of advice to end on. That's great, guys. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for everybody for tuning in. It's been a great session. If you guys just check out the links in the chat to the right, you'll see everybody's websites where you can check out more about their companies. And all that remains to say is thank you so much, Angus, Mary, Lucy, and Lloyd. It's been great, and hopefully catch you soon in some sort of physical environment. Thank you. Guys, click the button at the top of your screen. We'll catch you all soon. Take care. Bye.